Being broke costs money. That sounds like a paradox, but it's the most well-documented financial trap in behavioral economics. The less money you have, the worse your decisions get. And the worse your decisions get, the less money you keep. By the time you finish hearing this, you'll recognize a pattern running underneath choices you thought were yours. Start with a simple experiment. Researchers gave two groups of people the same cognitive tests. One group was asked to think about a minor car repair beforehand, something around $150. The other group was told the repair would cost $1,500. Among wealthy participants, the scores were identical. Among lower-income participants, the expensive scenario dropped their cognitive performance by the equivalent of 13 IQ points. 13 points. That's the difference between a normal night's sleep and pulling an all-nighter. Except nobody stayed up late. They just thought about money. The mechanism behind this is what researchers call cognitive bandwidth. Your brain has a fixed amount of processing power on any given day. When financial stress is running in the background, it eats into that bandwidth the same way it doesn't open browser tabs slow your computer. You still function, but everything takes longer, costs more effort, and produces worse output. And the cruelest part is what that reduced bandwidth targets first. Executive function, planning, impulse control. The exact mental tools you need most when money is tight are the ones that degrade first under financial pressure. So the person who can least afford a bad decision is neurologically set up to make more of them. The person who needs to compare prices, calculate long-term costs, and resist short-term temptation is operating with a compromised calculator. This shows up everywhere once you know where to look. Payday lending, for example, is an industry built entirely on this cognitive gap. The terms are objectively terrible, annual interest rates that can exceed 400%. Anyone doing the math calmly would walk away, but the person standing in that lobby at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, rent due Friday, isn't doing math calmly. Their bandwidth is maxed, the fee looks small, the relief is immediate, the trap is invisible until it's already closed. So why does poverty persist across generations even when individual intelligence stays constant? Because scarcity reshapes time horizons. When you're worried about making it through the week, your brain physically deprioritizes long-term thinking. A study tracking financial decision-making found that people under economic stress consistently chose smaller immediate rewards over larger delayed ones. Even when the math was transparent, even when they could articulate that the delayed option was better, they knew. They chose anyway. Their present self was screaming too loud for their future self to get a word in. This creates a brutal feedback loop. Short-term decisions generate long-term costs. Late fees, overdraft charges, higher insurance premiums because you couldn't pay the annual rate up front. The poor pay more for the same products and services, a phenomenon economists have measured for decades. A washing machine bought on installment costs 30 to 40% more than the same machine bought outright. The person who can only afford the weekly payment ends up spending the most. Now layer in something researchers observed about decision fatigue. Every choice you make throughout a day draws from the same cognitive reservoir. Wealthy people automate most financial decisions, direct debits, savings transfers, insurance renewals. Their money infrastructure runs on autopilot. When you're broke, every single transaction requires active thought. Can I afford this? Should I buy the cheaper brand? Which bill do I delay this month? Do I have enough gas to get to work until Friday? Each of those micro decisions drains the tank a little more. By evening, you're running on fumes. That's when the cigarettes get bought, the lottery ticket, the fast food instead of groceries. The choices that look irrational from the outside are happening inside a brain that's been making trade-off calculations since 6 a.m. There's a physical dimension too that most people overlook. Chronic financial stress elevates stress hormones continuously. Your body stays in a low-grade threat state, muscles slightly tense, sleep slightly disrupted, immune function slightly suppressed. Over months and years, this accumulates into measurable health consequences. Lower-income populations have higher rates of cardiovascular disease, diabetes and depression, and while diet and healthcare access play a role, the sustained neurochemical burden of scarcity is a factor that operates independently of those. Your body is literally being taxed by poverty, a tax that doesn't show up on any statement. And this brings us to what might be the most counterintuitive finding in this entire chain. When researchers gave direct cash transfers to extremely poor households in Kenya, no strings, no conditions, they expected modest improvements. What they measured was a cascade. Better nutrition led to better cognition. Lower stress led to better decision-making. Better decisions led to higher income beyond the cash received. The money itself mattered less than what it freed up. Bandwidth. Remove the scarcity signal, and the brain comes back online. The same people, with the same education and the same abilities, suddenly started making the kinds of choices economists associate with the middle class. The bandwidth was always there. It was just occupied. This reframes a question society keeps asking wrong. The conventional framing pits discipline against laziness, good decisions against bad character. But the research points somewhere more uncomfortable. The quality of your decisions is partly a function of your financial margin. Shrink the margin and the decisions degrade on a schedule as predictable as a machine wearing down under load. Picture two versions of yourself. One has 3 months of expenses saved, the other is $400 from disaster. Same brain, same values, same education. The version with savings sleeps better, thinks more clearly, plans further ahead, and resists impulse purchases more easily. The version without savings is spending cognitive resources just to stay afloat, resources that could have gone toward the exact decisions that build wealth over time. The gap between those two versions widens every single month. Compound interest works on decision quality the same way it works on money. Good decisions made from a place of margin create more margin, which enables more good decisions. Bad decisions made from a place of scarcity create more scarcity, which guarantees more bad decisions. Two trajectories diverging from the same starting point, running on the same hardware. Critics will point out that plenty of people escape poverty through sheer grit, and they're right. But survivorship bias makes that look more common than it is. For every person who powered through the cognitive tax of scarcity, dozens burned out doing the same thing. The ones who made it aren't proof that the system works, they're proof that some people can run a marathon and choose 2 sizes too small. It's possible. It's also a terrible argument against properly fitting shoes. So what breaks the loop? The research consistently points toward one variable: slack. Any form of financial buffer, even a small one, reduces the bandwidth tax enough to improve decision quality. Emergency funds of as little as $500 correlate with measurably better financial choices over the following year. The buffer doesn't solve the problem. It quiets the alarm long enough for the brain to think past Friday. That $500 buys something no budget spreadsheet accounts for, the cognitive space to use a budget spreadsheet at all. And this same mechanism, bandwidth crushed under load, decisions degrading on a curve, the system cannibalizing itself, runs identically inside organizations, relationships, and governments operating under resource constraints. Scarcity thinking scales. The loop just gets harder to see the bigger it gets.